Welcome on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton. It's time for State of the Program. Each and every week, we take a big topic that looks forward to the Texas football program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Hey, guys, I got to say, news coming out this morning officially. Quinn Ewers has declared for the NFL draft, according to his agent, Ron Slavin, by way of Pete Thamel, ESPN. Guys, this was expected by us. We talked about it all. I think it's important that we give Quinn the deserved accolades and appreciation. 3,472 yards this season, 31 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Turned the ball over maybe more than you wanted to, but he led the Longhorns to back-to-back national semifinals. Gerry, I'll start with you. Your final or closing thoughts on the career that was Quinn Ewers as he declares for the NFL draft.
Well, congrats to Quinn. I mean, look, these guys live out their dream when they declare for the NFL draft, and he's one of the few that actually get to do that, to go play college football. And yes, he was supposed to. He was a 5-star ranked prospect, but still, congrats to Quinn on that, because it's a long road, especially when you're injured as much as Quinn was from junior year to high school all the way through. He hadn't had a healthy season since his sophomore year in high school. I mean, that's a long time to not have a fully healthy season, because his redshirt year at Ohio State didn't really count. But so congrats to Quinn on that. You know, I'm always going to think that his legacy at Texas really did come down to the win at A&M. First time that game was played in 12 years. And it was a must-win game. Not to make the playoffs, but to get the SEC championship. And then the 4th and 13 against Arizona State. Those are the two for me that I think Texas fans will kind of always remember Quinn in terms of the good are those two moments. And Arizona State was a huge moment because, look, that's a game you're supposed to win, so you don't get anything out of winning that game, but you catch a hell of a lot if you lose that game. As a program, as Sarkisian, as Quinn. Okay, if Texas had lost that game, fair or not, Quinn would have been compared to Chris Sims by some fans. And I'm not saying I agree, but that's just where the thing was headed. That's how much it kind of, some of these things hinge on. And so, you know, his legacy, I think he built a really solid legacy at Texas. He was one of the guys that helped lead Texas out of this kind of dark 15-year period, save a year or two on the field. Him transferring back from home from Ohio State to Texas, that was huge for Steve Sarkisian's rebuild, because that got him back on track quicker than it looked like it was through the quarterback position, coupled with offensive line recruiting in that 2022 class. So, you know, my negative for Quinn is, golly, you never saw him stay healthy for a year. It was always rough waters for him from a health perspective, starting with the hit at the Alabama game. Guys, when it looked like he was going to throw for 400 yards that day. And then he takes that late hit, or not technically, I guess, from Dallas Turner, and sent him to the bench to rehab for a while. And then he just was never able to stay healthy. And so on the downside, I'm like, we never really saw the guy be healthy at Texas for very long. And that's one of the things you always are left wondering about with players that were often injured is, did we see his best?
I agree with that. And before I talk to CJ a little bit, I want to add this. The thing about that Arizona State game is he helped win that game. There was no run game to support him. He made the seminal play when he had to make it, then came back in second overtime, threw a touchdown pass as well as a 2-point conversion. If somebody else is the quarterback against Arizona State, I don't know if Texas wins that game. That's the reality of it, and why, to your point, Gerry, it's one of those games that cements a legacy and why it's so important. And then he played reasonably well against Ohio State, I thought. I mean, even amidst a lot of pressure coming at the quarterback. CJ finishes with 9,000-plus yards as a Longhorn, 9,128, 68 TDs, 24 touchdowns. Your thoughts on Quinn Ewers and his time at Texas as we now talk about him declaring for the NFL draft?
Yeah, I'll probably echo a lot of what Gerry said, right? You know, he's the guy that got Texas back to the national promised land, right? You know, you got out of the dark ages. You went to back-to-back college football semifinals. You have a conference championship. and you should have too, right? If if the kicking situation, whatnot, there were enough points on the board, or should have been enough points on the board by the end of that SEC championship game because of the offense, because of the defense. You should have been in a position to hoist another trophy. That would have been 2 in 2 years. I don't know how much that would have immediately impacted his legacy, but I think down the road, had that SEC championship game gone a different way, that would have helped quite a bit, especially when you start reflecting on the 2024 year. You would have been 14-2. You would have had a conference championship. You would have been top 4 in the country again, and you would have gone undefeated against Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. It's pretty significant. So that's unfortunate. But all in all, again, I think, and we've reiterated this since we've started talking about Quinn declaring and what's next for him, the program and whatnot. He should be celebrated for the way that his impact helped this program, not just on the field, because we've talked about it. Who wants to come play with the 5-star quarterback? That helps, right? Steve Sarkisian recruiting with the 5-star quarterback. That helps, and Arch Manning certainly down the road. That's going to help as well. But the rebuild of the program, I think, in large part, kind of hindered on getting the quarterback, getting the face of the franchise, if you will. And Quinn Ewers was that for Steve Sarkisian over the last 3 years.
I completely agree with that. That's a good point, because he brought in other players. That's kind of what Gerry hit on too, is that it wasn't just a 1 + 1 = 2 with Quinn Ewers. When you got him to come back to Texas, you got some other players. It happened right alongside or coincided with the Pancake Factory as well. And there it kind of grew from there, and a lot of positive things happened as well. All right. I've got to ask y'all a question now. Where do you think his draft stock might be? Is he a day 2 pick? A lot of people just assume he's not a day 1, and I agree with them. I don't think he's going to be a first rounder. No. Is he a day 2 or is he a day 3? What are our thoughts here on Quinn Ewers and his draft stock, Gerry?
I think one, quarterbacks always move up the board. So the tape's just not there to support a first round pick. Right? Now, I've said this the whole time. His on-air pro day workouts are probably going to be very, very impressive if it's close to what he did last year throwing for A.D. Mitchell, Whittington, and all those guys for the Texas Pro Day. If he delivers there again like he did last year, then the NFL guys are going to have to weigh what did they just see versus what's on tape. But the tape is just not there to support a first-round pick in my estimation. But it's the NFL, man. I mean, who knows? Some of these guys get drafted high, and you just kind of, the first round at quarterback, like an Anthony Richards, kind of scratch your head. So he's going to move up the board. I see him as a 3rd or 4th at the end of the day, though, because I just don't think the tape is there to support a move, a trajectory upward as high as, maybe we thought it would be a year ago.
Look, Colt McCoy was third round pick. What do you think, CJ?
It's going to be interesting. It's not a good quarterback draft. And I think one other aspect of this that helps Quinn is, look, I think he's going to be the youngest player in the NFL by quite a while, especially at the quarterback spot once he does get drafted. And, who knows how much that actually impacts his play. If you're a team like we've seen with the Packers, if you have your guy, but you want to look towards the future, maybe you spend it on a first-round guy like Jordan Love, right? And again, all it takes is one team, and I'm not thinking this is going to happen, but, you just never know at the quarterback spot in the NFL. I think Quinn is anywhere from 45 to 65, 70 in that range. I think that's just kind of where we've seen him consistently be. Interceptions were a problem, whether they be tipped, whether they be overthrown, whatever. The ball ended up in the hands of opponents too many times this year. He doesn't create a whole lot with his legs. And look, we've talked about it, and not just college football, but the NFL as well. It's hard when you don't have the threat of your legs at the quarterback position. And so that's going to be a big knock on him too. However, he's going to light it up in the pro day and the combine and every single thing that leads up to the draft. And essentially, it's all about what kind of lasting memory do you have before that draft day comes. I think he might surprise some folks with where he ends up, just in the sense of the promise more than the actual tape on the field.
Well, your comment about his youth is very poignant. I mean, if you can get him in a situation like Jordan Love had it with the Packers, where he sits behind Aaron Rodgers, then takes over, he gets to build his body up some more. Gerry mentioned his issue with injuries. He gets to kind of slow ride into that. and get used to the NFL game, that might be ideal for someone. You don't want to throw him to the wolves early. I think that's one of the big pieces. I don't know that physically he's there yet, but CJ, you're also right. All it takes is one.
Yep.
There can be 100 girls at the ball, but all you need is one to like you, and you got a chance, right? All right. I want to ask you guys next, and I want y'all to contemplate this, whether or not you think Texas could be better at the quarterback position next year. First, before we do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, reach out to Adam and his firm at loweylawfirm.com. They'll give you a free, no strings attached consultation to tell you whether or not they think you might be due some compensation. Again, that's Adam Lowy over at the loweylawfirm.com. Reach out to them there. CJ, I'm going to go with you. Arch Manning's numbers. He is the heir apparent at quarterback, no questions asked. His numbers in short times this year were very, very impressive overall. But you also saw some learning curve issues at times too. What were your thoughts and his overall on Arch Manning and whether or not Texas might be able to be better at quarterback in 2025?
Yeah, he was 61-90 for 939 yards. He had 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's 68% completion right there. Of course, we saw 2 starts in there, one of which he lit the world on fire. And the other one, I think he's had more of a learning curve, right? We've talked about at UTSA, he threw 12 passes. And in the first game in which he came in for Quinn Ewers, 12 passes, 4 touchdowns. It's pretty darn good. Doesn't get much better than that. But then you see the learning curve against ULM with the 2 interceptions. You bounce back against Mississippi State, the first SEC game in Texas program history, throws for 320 and 2 scores, and you start thinking, okay, the game's slowing down for him. You talk to him after the game, and it's very much what he was echoing as well. I got to see the field. I got to go in with a game plan. I got to see how defense is adjusted in real time, and that's encouraging for a kid 2 starts into his career to pick up on that. And so all in all, the splash plays were there, the deep shots were there, the legs, the running were there. They all little bits and pieces of what could be the larger picture for 2025. And I think that's very encouraging for Texas when you consider the offensive, schematics and kind of ideals of Steve Sarkisian's offense. Take it deep and let the quarterback create. I think it fits perfectly with what we saw from Arch Manning and what we will see from Arch Manning in 25.
Better or worse at quarterback in 2025 Texas with Arch Manning, Gerry?
I think it's going to be better in the way for Texas, the way teams defense the Longhorns in Sark's scheme. So I mentioned this before. I'm watching because Arch he's not a Sam Levitt twitched up, just scramble around Houdini guy, but he's a dual threat possibility as a pocket passer. He's not going to have a ton of design runs called for him, but what he does, linebackers could play really deep against Texas, have great depth last year across the middle of the field because Quinn wasn't a threat. That linebacker depth is going to be challenged more by Arch Manning. Is that going to open up the middle of the field more for Texas potentially if those linebackers can't take that extra step and a half of depth against Texas? That's one thing I'm watching. And look, Sark loves to throw it deep. Rod Babers, he talks about it all the time. Arch likes to throw it deep. Now, there's the good and the bad in that, right? Where if Arch makes 2 strides, I think Texas will be better at quarterback next year. One, the way teams are going to play them. I mentioned that. 2, in his time he's played this year, he's thrown deep late and deep middle too much.
Yes.
And is that because he pressed and or this is because the learning curve, because he is a guy that likes to press the ball down the field vertically? If he doesn't show signs of doing that too much early next year, if he has better timing, him and Sark develop better timing down the field with Arch as the quarterback, I think they're going to be potentially a lot better on offense because it can't be deep middle and it can't be deep late. And he did show signs of that, whether it was pressing, hadn't played a lot. If he gets that out of his system this last year, when he's the starter and he's in more of a groove and he has everything in front of him from Sark's scheme, They've had a full offseason prepare. I think this offense can be better because the other thing is Arch's ability to throw the ball vertically down the field, I think is also going to, and his legs are going to help the Texas run game. Because if those linebackers have to be more cognizant and the safeties have to be more cognizant of a threat over the top, that opens up your run game. That can take an extra hat out of the box in a lot of situations or half a hat out of the box. I do think the offense is going to be better as long as Arch isn't forcing the ball deep late, deep middle too much.
I'll tell you where, look, I think Texas's offense actually was plenty good in most games they played this year, right? I mean, they won 13 games.
Right.
What were the games they lost? Ohio State and Georgia.
Yeah.
What is Georgia notoriously susceptible to? QB run. That's right. Could Texas have used, even against Arizona State or another tight game like Ohio State, could they have used some QB run at times to just augment what they had? So I don't know if overall, because you're losing a 3-year starter, and say what you want about that experience matters.
Yeah. Checking in and out of plays, Bobby.
Yeah, checking in and out of plays. Those things matter. I think that the thing that I would say is it gives you an opportunity to be different and to address some run game issues where those times you weren't able to run the ball, those are the games you lost.
Yeah.
And bottom line, right? If Texas was able to run the ball this year, they won the game.
Yep. If
they couldn't run the ball, 50-50, right? And so I think that that's one of those things that he addresses. Maybe, and as Gerry talks about, he likes to go down the field more, et cetera. We see some early season, youth issues. I just think that he is, from what I saw this year and what I've seen of him overall, I just feel like Texas is going to be in really good hands with him. I can't tell you he's going to have a better year than Quinn Ewers. My expectations, though, are that Texas will not take a step backwards at quarterback, which I think is really what I'm getting at and what we should be concerned with as Texas fans. As you get more and more talent, which is what Texas is doing right now, they're accumulating more talent across the board. As long as you keep that level of quarterback play and either go up, I mean, you can go down a little bit, but not much, right? You can't go all the way back and slide back like they did in the 2010s at times.
Yeah.
That and CJ, you wrote a tweet today that I thought was, Quinn Ewers took Texas out of its roughest stretch of football in its football history, at least modern era football history. Quinn Ewers is the guy that helped do that, along with Steve Sarkisian and guys like Jahdae Barron. All those guys did it. But at quarterback, it's such the seminal position that Texas just doesn't want to go backwards from here, not appreciably, at least. I think that's what's most important to me as we look at Arch Manning. Gerry?
One thing none of us have mentioned yet, because there's a lot to mention with this, is Sark can call different games now too, because Arch can play on the move more. He can move the pocket more if he wants to. He has more flexibility because of the mobility within Sark's own scheme and his game planning. That is a major thing in college football. And maybe not as much in the NFL, but in college football, the more pressure you can put on an opponent through a quarterback's movement, the better you are offensively. That's just a fact. And it doesn't always have to be through QB run game. It can be through waggles. It can be through just the quarterback playing on the move. You can create guys false stepping more. You can put guys in conflict more. That's something that Steve Sarkisian is going to have at his disposal now.
To add to that, I mean, the first 2 play calls that we saw from Arch Manning this season, the first 2 throws for the first 2 games that he was in were waggles to DeAndre Moore. So that it talks about the comfortability to throw him into the fire and say, all right, get him on the move, let him extend the pocket and find the guys down the field. The first touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore was, I believe, his 3rd option on backside crosser. So that plays right into the strength.
We'll see a different offense.
Yeah.
Not altogether different. They'll still be the Sark gadgets and the Sark screen and all that stuff that we've come to really like. But we'll see a different type of quarterback play. Doesn't mean it's going to be better or worse. It'll just be different because I think Sark, and this is one of the things you get with Sark, I think he fits his offense to his quarterback.
Yeah.
That's what offensive coordinators do and fill their strengths. All right. That's going to do it for today's state of the program. Thank you all so much for listening in. This has been brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. Been helping injured Texans for 20 plus years. He's also been with us as a sponsor now for 2+ years. Thank you, Adam. And if you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, or automobile accident of any kind and think you might be due compensation, reach out to Adam and his group at loweylawfirm.com. They'll give you a no strings attached free consultation today. That's loweylawfirm.com. Thank you all so much. CJ, Gerry, before we let folks go, any final thoughts on this Quinn Ewers going pro, the handoff now to Arch Manning? Anything to add from either of you guys?
I'm excited, and I think Texas fans are as well. Quinn, for better or for worse, I think was a pretty polarizing guy amongst Texas fans, and there's no hiding that, right? Look, I think Quinn should be celebrated, and we've talked about Chris Sims and everything in that category as well. I don't know if the celebratory approach to Quinn will come now or in 10 years or in 20 years. But again, looking back at what he was able to do to elevate this program, it's remarkable. Now, I think you're handing the program off to a pretty talented quarterback who didn't have to spend a year and a half building, right? He kind of can take over where the program is currently and get going. And that's the sign of a healthy program. That's a sign of what you want from that transition from quarterback to quarterback. And Texas fans should be excited for the future. I think that's the end all be all.
And now we have all off season to talk about which suite will Peyton and Eli be photoed in first. Because now they'll be making appearances at the games. Which suite? They're not going to sit in the stands. Which suite are they going to be? Is McConaughey going to be in the suite? This is all the things that we talked about now.
Oh, it would be fun watching Texas football again soon, August 30th, first game. But we'll get a chance to see him at spring ball too, guys. Don't forget about that. All right, that'll do it for State of the Program for CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchinson. I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good day. We're still tracking all these portal entries and other NFL draft stuff. Hook 'em.